Hey friends, just a quick little note here at the top of this episode. This episode is kind of my bid for all my piping and drumming friends to pick up and try out the pennywhistle if they haven't done so before. So get ready to be convinced that that is a good idea. My guest today has a ton of really excellent materials, links to all of that in the show notes. I hope you'll really enjoy it. But during the conversation, one thing that comes up is these arrangements that Timothy Cummings has done. There are links to these down in the show notes as well. What you're hearing in the background is one of them. It's called Southern Harmonies, and what Timothy does is if you were to purchase this arrangement from his website, from Birchen Music and Publishing, you receive the music for the accompanist that's, of course, written in the key that will sound when they play it on a piano or a keyboard or an organ, whatever. Then you also have the lead sheet for the key that is sounding for the lead, so if you wanted to pick up a whistle, a D whistle, and play it in the sounding key, you could, but for so many of us who are accustomed to reading highland bagpipe music, to not only pick up a different instrument, but then to read music that's written in a different key can be very daunting, can be too much, really. And so Timothy, with the Highland Piper in mind, also provides a sheet of music that is written in Highland bagpipe, if you will. And so then it's like you could look at that music and you could play on your practice chanter and it would come out just fine. Then you could put down your practice chanter and pick up a low D whistle or a standard penny whistle and play it just the same, with the small variations that come from playing whistle, right? But really basically just play it exactly the same. But what would come out of your instrument would match the accompanist. So, right? So we'll come in right now. You're hearing Southern Harmonies. We'll go out as well on another arrangement of his that in the same way. That one's called Wondrous Love, and that one's for Highland bagpipe with a B flat chanter and organ. Same thing. You get a sheet of music that you can read just like standard bagpipe music, but if you unplug your standard bagpipe chanter and plug in a concert B flat chanter instead, what comes out magically matches the organ. I shouldn't say magically matches, you still have to tune it and stuff like that, right? But anyway, you get the idea. Just wanted to share some examples of that. So if that's a barrier to entry for you, consider it destroyed. Get yourself a whistle and have lots of fun with it. And you know what? I don't get a ton of missives, so if I can be at all helpful in your whistling journey, as you will surely be very jazzed about whistling after this episode, shoot me an email, TheDroningOnPodcast@gmail.com, or a message on social media or anything like that. Have a good one and enjoy the episode. Bye-bye. I feel like maybe the best way to kind of break ice and get going is to ask you, Sean, what's up with the rubber ducks?
The rubber ducks were a result of a very strange tour that me and my current bandmate Patrick Martin did when we were in a previous band. We were somewhere out on the Northeast, I think, and we had ourselves a day to kill on the Jersey Shore on the boardwalk, which I'm sure is a wonderful place in the dead of summer. But in December, when we were on tour, it was empty, and so we had a lot of downtime to fill, and so we filled it by wandering about, and we wandered into some sort of little game room deal and was playing air hockey and stuff, and my buddy Patrick in the band just parked himself in front of one of those claw machines, and the guy's just a natural at it, and so he just starts yoinking these things out of here like they were popcorn kernels. They're flying out of there. He's killing it. So it kind of just became a thing, and so now we've all just sort of adopted this one particular very large blue rubber duck named Dent.
Right, I noticed it.
He's our buddy. So he's kind of our mascot. Patrick likes to say this is the reason why I'm single. He goes with us everywhere. Yeah, he goes everywhere. Yeah, it just kind of became a thing, and I don't know, it's just good for laughs, basically.
Yeah, because I noticed it. I feel like, I can't remember now if it was in a music video for the Sternwheelers or just in some photos, but there are rubber ducks, almost like Easter eggs here and there in your whistle stuff, too.
I like to, yeah, we've all just sort of acquired them, a bunch of them. Our drummer in our band's got a very elegant wall-mounted display rack for about 20 or 30 of them.
Oh, really?
So they're just everywhere, kind of.
Ah, that's awesome.
Again, as a result of boredom on tour.
Well, maybe let's just follow this where it takes us naturally. Tell me a little bit about the band you're playing with. Tell me a little bit about Sternwheelers.
Yeah, we started. My friend Patrick and I kind of started it as a reason to hang out and drink and shoot the breeze, basically, and then
That's a good origin story.
Well, kind of. It was just we got to be friends from this other band, and the other band we were in, they just hired a bunch of really talented folks, which was great. I met some of my best friends because of that group, and we just became actual friends outside of the band, and started hanging out. And he was a songwriter, played on Broadway in Nashville for years, toured the country with various songwriter rock type bands. So it was sort of a world that I didn't really know much about, but he kind of wanted to do this project and just see if it was going somewhere and see if we could come up with something. And it started to.
Ah,
It
yeah.
was mostly just hanging out in his house, and then some other friends of ours from the Nashville Irish music scene got on board, and we're liking it, and it kind of turned into a thing. So it's been kind of fun. The pandemic, I think, in a weird way, really helped, gave us a little bit of time to hopefully get better and spend some time practicing. So that was something good from something bad. We were kind of born out of the very end of the very start of the pandemic, and have been plugging away ever since.
So it kind of became a project for you to keep you sane through the
Pretty much.
lockdowns and stuff.
It was, yeah, and it was one of those things where it wasn't that weird using Zoom and Teams and stuff like that to be able to just maybe not rehearse, because you can't really do that with a lag, but at least be able to talk things through. And we were able to come up with songs and hey, what do you think of this? And shoot each other some recordings and build some songs that way and get together whenever we could.
Yeah. Well, there's you guys have put out some really awesome content. I'll make sure in the show notes there are links to. I'll put some links to the YouTube videos and the website. Certainly, the website's so classy. Sean, this is one of the things I wanted to ask you about. I am guessing you made the website.
yeah. I'm the web guy, the video guy, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I've been doing that longer than probably anything else.
That's the thing. But maybe because I've been watching so much of your content, I felt like I could very quickly identify like your fingerprints. But one of the classiest things, like it looks so great, color scheme, really
cool.
Awesome logo. I love the Stern Wheelers logo. That is so cool.
Oh,
but on the landing page, it's got the standard like description of a band, right? Mm-hmm. Great description. It's concise and to the point. But I really appreciate that at the bottom, where you would usually see a learn more button. Mm-hmm. Instead, so the paragraph ends with, we celebrate the influences that each nation has had on each other with pioneer spirit, sardonic wit, tragedy, pining, and humor. And then where you would click learn more, typically the button says, what?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I appreciate
Patrick wrote that one, and I was like, "What? Doesn't sound like anything we'd actually say." But it sounds a little press releasey. But I thought I'd have a little fun with it. Yeah.
No, it's excellent. I love that. But yeah, that's so. What's the deal with all the high quality video and audio production? Because that's one of the things about your channel. There are other whistle channels out there that also do good content, but. Sure. Yeah. There's nobody to touch you for quality here.
Well, I appreciate that. It's nice of you to say. It started off like everybody, I suppose, with either a phone or a mediocre camera in my living room, and just really it started about 10 or 15 years ago or so, almost 20 years now that I think about it. Mm-hmm. With some very, very poor quality audio and video. And it really was just sitting in my basement and with a single camera on a black backdrop for a long time. And then the company that I worked for asked me to do some talking head style video stuff for work, and they said, "Oh, you're a musician, you must know how to do video." And well, not really, those are two different things, but I'll see what I can do. Yeah. And I had some gear, and so I kind of started doing that, and it was for a friend of mine who had been with the company 20 years, and they wanted to do a big kind of a congratulations footage deal with people from all over the company. So in addition to all the talking head stuff, I kind of got into the B-roll side of things, and shots around the office, and I got the drone up in the air and all this stuff. I thought, this is kind of fun. And it turned out pretty good, I thought. And then they got me into doing some more medical property, medical office, real estate work, videography kind of thing. So I started just applying a lot of that stuff and just started doing my research. There's some great YouTube channels for videography out there. Peter McKinnon is one that I've learned a lot from. There's just some really talented folks who can make it easy to understand. Like hopefully I'm trying to do with the whistle side of things. They're able to do with the videography thing, and they just made it easily digestible. And it's just fun. I just kind of found it that I like doing it.
So is your at this point is your main job description videographer, or is this still something you just do kind of on the side? For yourself, for the company?
A lot of it is, yeah. It's a bit of both. I'm technically an IT director by trade, so I do more client-server workstation, that kind of stuff. But the videography thing has definitely been a big part, probably 50-50 at this point now. So I do a lot of, mostly real estate type stuff, although I actually just did my first commercial ad for something other than real estate recently for a tinwhistle company, which was kind of cool.
Oh, for a tinwhistle company. That's awesome.
Yep.
Right on.
So yeah, it's kind of fun. It's I don't know if you call it a side hustle or a primary hustle or what. I'm not sure yet, but
Yeah,
you know,
the hustle is taken over.
yeah, kind of.
I do like that though. That like I can spend a long time enjoying your videos, and I don't want to make you feel in any way uncomfortable with praise
No,
here, Sean. I don't want to be too
appreciate it.
much,
No,
but
it's nice of you to say.
like sometimes I can watch your videos like very carefully, like specifically like, oh, I'd like to learn that tune, or oh, this sounds like good advice, or the comparisons between whistles. I'm a sucker for comparison videos between just
Me
about
too.
anything, barbecue,
Me too.
whistles,
Yeah.
anything,
Me too.
and so I those are the ones that like I'll pay close attention to, but sometimes I'll hit a like a tutorial video and just kind of let it play in the background while I'm working. And it's just like the sound quality is good, so I can have my headphones on and it sounds great. And
Good.
the video quality is good, so I can anytime I look over there, there's like really pleasing drone shots going on. Like these are like half tutorial and half like high quality vlog. You know what I mean?
Yeah, kind of. I kind of got in that road. Yeah, and it's funny. Some of it's. I'll think back like, well, I didn't really need half of that video, but at the same time, it was fun, and I kind of like doing it. So,
yeah, I
don't
love the
always do that
establishing
with
shots
some
and stuff. Those are
of,
great.
yeah, some of those it feels like it works, and sometimes it's maybe it's overkill. I don't know, but mostly it's just I do it because I like doing it, and I just that's to me that's the artistic side of things.
Yeah. So that videography stuff, I was curious if it started when you were a kid or as you got older.
I'm relatively late to it. Yeah.
I know though that whistles started when you were younger because I remember you mentioning you had one of those whistles. You had a low D whistle that was one of those with the wooden chiff thing in the top. Is that the fipple? I can't remember what that part's
Yeah,
called.
fipple. Yeah.
I had a couple of those when I was a kid, but they were little ones, a D or a C, and so I can't even imagine how playing a low D like those things suck the air out of your lungs like crazy.
Yeah. It's an absolute monster, and even the light, the high ones, the Clark and the Shaws, the high D whistles. I did a comparison on those versus another one that the same company makes, and to me, the ones with the wooden block, they're so breathy, they're really difficult to play. They just take so much air, and the low whistles are exponentially worse. Some people really love that breathy sound. It's never been a favorite of mine, but the unplayability of it is really what does it in for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started out when I was a little kid. I had a tin whistle lying around the house, just a cheapo generation. I have no idea whatever happened to that one, and I used to just make noises on it. I never really started playing until I was about 17 or 16, I think.
Do you know where that one had come from? Like, had it been a gift to you when you were a kid or something?
I have no idea, because I lived in a very small town in Maine when I was born, and where that little bugger came from, I couldn't tell you. Probably just some random gift shop.
Yeah.
But my dad owned a bar in New York, an Irish pub in New York, in the 90s, and I would hang out there. And
so you're like super legit when it comes to like trad sessions and stuff like that. Your dad owned an Irish pub in New York. That's pretty darn legit.
Oh yeah, I mean, if I was very fortunate to be in an area, one of the main areas for Irish traditional music in New York. But I also came at it kind of late. I mean, most folks start when they're 5, 6 years old. I didn't start till I was 16 or 17. So in that regard, I was kind of backward, and I came at it through the Pogues, really.
Oh,
I
sure.
would just sit in the basement of his bar and bang out Pogues tunes. Yeah, one of the regulars, one of my favorite drunks, went over to Ireland and came back from a gift shop and said, "Hey, here you go, kid," and gave me a tin whistle when I was 16. And he goes, "Hey, bang on that for a while." So I did. I went in the basement and learned Fairy Tale in New York and things like that.
That's my favorite one.
Oh yeah, it's everybody. It's a classic.
Yep.
And then there was a fellow who was would fill in bartending. He happened to be an all-Ireland button accordion player, and he heard I was learning the whistle, and he goes, "Let me take you out to a session. You got to hear some real music, kid." So, all right, cool. So we find one place, and it's him, and there was a guitar player, a fellow by the name of John Doyle, who later became famous with Solus, among other things.
Yeah.
They were buddies, and so we were looking for a session. We ended up at a place called Mona's in New York, which is in the East Village. Not sure if it's still there. I'm pretty sure the session is long gone, but it was a hole in the wall kind of a joint. And they didn't get started till midnight or something like that, and went till about 3 or 4 in the morning, and it just blew me away.
There you are, a 16-year-old kid.
Well, sort of. I walked in, and the bartender goes, "He can't come in here. He's too young." And they go, "Oh no, he's with us." They go, "Oh, no problem. Here you go." And he pulls me a pint. I thought, "Oh, this is a weird world. This is a strange world." But then the
all
music,
out or all in.
Well, kind of, yeah. And then it was probably 5 or 6 guys, and they just absolutely set the place on fire. And I thought, man, I'm learning the wrong music. I got to start learning this. And from that point on, I was pretty much hooked.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds amazing.
And they later made a record at Mona's. There's a
Oh, did
fantastic
they?
record called Live at Mona's. Yeah, it's a great session recording. It was just one of those amazing session spots in New York that's now gone, replaced by other amazing session spots because there's still great music there. But that one in particular was the one that really got me going.
I'll pull up Live at Mona's and add that to the show notes as well.
Check it out.
Everybody's
There's some great stuff on there. Some wonderful players.
Yeah. The what do you call it? Like a serendipitous positioning of where you are and who you encounter and stuff like that throughout your story. I love hearing that kind of stuff. That sounds really cool, man.
Yeah, and New York was great for that. At least for this style of music. It's in the '90s. It was pretty much New York, Chicago, and Boston was about the only place you're going to hear Irish music back then. Now that's not the case. There's folks everywhere, but back then, boy, it was every night of the week you could find a session pretty much.
And you ended up in Music City.
I did.
And how did that happen? That's a bit of a move.
Cost of living at the
sure.
time was way better coming from New York. Now, probably not so much. But
right.
now, when my wife at the time, when we left, the Irish rock band that we were in was based in New York, and we both had family kind of in the Nashville vicinity, or at least closer to it. Or a lot of her family was from Texas, and they had kind of moved up here. So, it just seemed to make sense. And at the time, it was a whole lot cheaper. And there was a scene. There was a couple of folks here who I knew from when I actually went to high school here in Nashville.
Oh, did you?
I knew a couple of folks here then that were great players. So I didn't think it was going to be too bad, and it turned out there's a pretty good scene, and it's actually grown quite a bit here in Nashville. Like everything else in Nashville lately, I suppose. But it's a pretty good collection of musicians here now.
Yeah, I wondered if being that you were both musicians, if part of that was like, well, yeah, there's music in Nashville.
Well, not really. We were kind of out of it at that point, or at least as far as full time. We didn't really have plans on doing that. We kind of wanted to have somewhat normal lives for a while, and that all changed. We're both ended up back playing music eventually, anyway.
Yeah. Did you you mentioned, I think it was in an email when you and I were going back and forth, that you were a recovering highland bagpiper. When did that come into the picture? Because you have one video where you did a tutorial on Highland Laddie, and in the thumbnail, I saw some of those wall shuttle pipes. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, he's going to play pipes. Let's hear them. And they never came out. So
that's
what's
the
up?
fake out. No, nobody would want me to hear me play pipes. I do still occasionally bust out the shuttle pipes just because they're pleasant and quiet and that sort of thing, and just to kind of keep my chops there. But no, I started with whistle briefly. I started with that, and then maybe a few months later, my dad got me a practice chanter because he pretty much always wanted me to play bagpipes, which is odd, being a fellow from Sligo, that he wanted to have a Highland bagpiper in the family. God knows why. But it was big in New York with the police pipe bands and all that sort of thing, so there was a lot of that, I guess. But so I did. I played pipes for several years and competed. I got as high as grade 3, I believe, so I was aggressively mediocre. And, I competed with the bands quite a few times, but I just kind of got a little burned out on the whole competition side of things and drifted more into the session, Irish sessions side of the world, And I don't play pipes too much anymore. Every now and again, like I said, I'll bust out the shuttle pipes just to keep things alive. But hopefully the experience helps, at least in the YouTube things, because I do get a lot of pipers asking me whistle-type questions.
Yes.
And there's a lot of crossover. There's some things that don't apply, and there's a lot of things that do. So it's hopefully it's somewhat useful.
When you were playing with pipe bands there in New York, were you hopping around to police bands? Wouldn't they let you join, or were there other community bands?
The only thing I ever did was I got to march in a St. Patrick's Day parade with one of the bands. They kind of snuck me in there, which was probably not kosher at all. But
so other than that, you were a solo piper.
No, I played in pipe bands here in Nashville for a while.
Oh, right, that's right. High school in Nashville, that's right.
Yeah, I was out here. And then there was a group in Kearney, New Jersey that I played with over the summer that I popped in with when I was up there for the summers with at my dad's place. So, I wasn't really in the city playing pipes too much.
Gotcha.
Just, again, the occasional St. Patrick's Day thing. That was good for laughs.
Well, and that was the sort of like the impetus for when I reached out to you, because I've been thinking a lot about this. I don't know. You mentioned that the competition scene kind of burnt you out, and I kind of have a foot in each of those worlds, like a foot in a competitive pipe band, and then a foot with like a trad group, And I do feel like I can see how I know people who go back and forth. It's like different phases of life or something, but there also seems to be some sort of like base level one kind of musician versus another kind of thing. I don't know. It's like some of us really thrive with the competition aspect,
Sure.
and some of us really do not. It can
Yep.
it can really kill the art in a lot of ways,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like the competition for you could kind of dive in with one specific tune and really get it perfect.
Yeah,
So there was that, but you can kind of do the same thing in the Irish world. It doesn't seem to be as talked about as much, but I mean, I know I've talked with some folks about spending a half an hour on a 2-bar phrase, just over and over, and finding every possible way to play that, and just experimenting with each note and getting the right tone on a flute or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Comparing that to how your friend the fiddle player is hitting that same phrase because their physics
Yeah.
of their instrumental. You can kind of get into that minutia too, I think, in both worlds. But it wasn't. I don't know. The competition thing, I guess, it just kind of. I think I just got drawn more to the other side of things rather than giving up on the other. I just kind of, I think my focus just shifted a little bit, and I sort of got more attached to the community aspect of the Irish session world, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that's it has occurred to me sometimes. I have some friends who play pipes who only play pipes, and who have asked me questions about whistles and stuff like that, right?
Yep.
And I have thought to myself like, and not that this is an original thought in the entire world, right? But like it hadn't occurred to me until a little while ago, and that's when I reached out to you. That like the whistle is like if a piper, especially a grown up piper who's got a full time job and kids and everything else, right? If they feel like they want to expand sort of like their musical range, both literally and just like kind of in general,
Sure.
they're not. It's not practical to pick up the piano at that point in their life,
Right,
But the
yeah.
whistle, maybe there's a much lower barrier for entry where they can transfer some skills, like you mentioned, from what they've
Yeah.
already learned.
Absolutely. I mean, the fingers are. I mean, it's not exactly the same because you got different number of holes in the chanter versus the whistle, but the concepts are the same. The grace notes and everything. That's a thing that a lot of folks really struggle with when they're coming to the whistle from nothing, when it's their first instrument. But as a bagpiper, you get what is it, GBE, whatever those 3 grace notes you got to do. It's the fingers work. Those same fingers work the same way on the whistle.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff does translate. The exact ornaments, like torluas and stuff like that, it doesn't really cross over necessarily, but a lot of the concepts do. The main thing is the style of it. I can pretty much always tell a highland bagpiper who's playing whistle versus an Irish player, because it's a different style. But it works too. I think that style is adaptable to the whistle, and it fits pretty well. It's different than you'd hear an Irish player playing, but it works.
Yeah. And is a big part of that the embellishments? Because I have wondered about that when like listening to you do your tutorials. Like in competitive Highland piping, we have very clear, like you say, terluath means this, a grip means this, a burl is this.
Right.
Is there a similar set of standard vocabulary for embellishments in whistling, or is it more like every teacher kind of says then you do the blip bleep bloop,
Right.
and you kind of like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the vocabulary is the same. I would say how you do them is variable. Like the Torlu equivalent, I suppose, would be a cran in Irish music.
I see. So there
something
are names for
sort of
things like that.
Sort of, yeah. But the way that you do that is not written in stone. There's 3 or 4 different ways to do it. The quote-unquote traditional way would make my head explode. It just does. My brain just doesn't work that way. So I came up with my own sort of different version of it. And I don't know, my ear is not good enough to tell the difference. It sounds pretty good to me. So, there's different ways to do a lot of those. A lot of folks will use different fingers for simple single grace notes. Single ornaments are not everybody's using the same finger. Sometimes it depends on the whistle. Some whistles are more responsive in a certain area than others. So, there's some degree of variability to that. But really, the main thing is the style. When you hear a Scottish bagpiper, Highland bagpiper playing whistle, it sounds like they're playing a bagpipe tune.
Yeah.
On the whistle, it sounds very, it's very, very pipey. Whereas the Irish music is a lot more legato and a lot more lifty, a lot more groove based. Piping seems to me, at least always seemed to me, to be very focused on the ornaments. Like the ornaments would define the accents, whereas in Irish tunes, typically the tune defines the accents, and you find your ways to either complement that or intentionally challenge it, I guess.
Yeah,
If
that
makes any
totally makes
sense,
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's more the feel of the tunes I think that's different than the ornaments because again the physics of the ornaments and how you do them are kind of the same,
Yeah.
more or less.
Well, it's comforting to me to hear you talk about how there are different ways to do things within whistles because I do think that as I'm trying to think of like I want my friends, my piper friends, to all buy whistles. That's kind of my goal
Yeah.
here, right? And
Yeah.
so as I'm thinking about what are the barriers to entry, right?
Yeah.
One of them is that if we have spent a lot of time in the competitive piping world, we have a very almost assumed idea that there is a very specific right way to do everything. And if
Yeah.
you're not doing it right, you're disrespecting the instrument and you're going to be
Right.
ridiculed by your peers, like all kinds of
Sure.
stuff. And
Absolutely.
so, like, one of the fears of picking up whistle is like, well, sure, I'm making a song out of this, but in my closet, I wouldn't play this in front of people because I don't know if I'm doing it right,
Right. Absolutely. Well, and that is to me the good thing, but also I can see how that could be a very frustrating thing.
Yeah.
That there really is not a lot of right and wrong to this music, at least not that I've found. There's a lot of personal style involved. There's a lot of options involved, and the again fun / frustrating thing is that you don't play the same tune the same way twice. At least
yeah.
ideally, you're never going to play it the second time through exactly the same way you do it the first time, and the ornaments are not written down. I've only ever seen that work well once in Irish music. That was Willie Clancy's piping book. Somebody went through the no doubt painstaking effort of transcribing all of his little ornaments. But even then, that's a representation of how this one specific person played this specific tune. That's not the one way to do it. Whereas with piping, you get the Scots Guards book, and by God, this is the way you play the tune.
Right, that's the setting.
That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Which is
If you
definitely not
play
the
a
case.
D grace note where there's supposed to be a G grace note, that's a different
There'll be a hell of a
setting.
thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's none of that in Irish music. There's loads of different settings. And don't get me wrong, we certainly have mind-numbing discussions on the East Galway setting versus the West
Sure,
Clare setting
yeah.
until you want to get up and leave. We definitely have those kind of conversations too. But it's not so much about, I don't know. It's just a bit of a different vibe, I guess. It's not so much right and wrong
Yeah.
as much as it is how that works for you, and the instruments are a little different too. Like I said before, sometimes a top finger grace note works on one whistle, and on another whistle it makes it jump the octave, and now you've got a different problem to deal with.
Right,
So
yeah.
there's some of that too.
So
some
there's
variability
maybe a
in
little
instruments.
more like getting to know your specific whistle, whereas with pipes, pick up any practice chanter, pick up any set of pipes, it's
Yeah.
gonna play the same. You put
Pretty
the same
much, yeah.
fingers.
And there can be, and there's some standard things to whistles, of course, but yeah, there's definitely some variability. And there's some exercise, and there's some things that I always do, even after 25 whatever years of playing the whistle. When I get a new one or somebody, hey, try this whistle out, there's a few things that I'll always do, just some octave jumps, and just see how the thing responds, because they're not always the same.
Yeah, yeah. Another of the things that kind of comes to mind when you mention octave jumping and stuff like that, and speaking of written music too, like you do advocate for learning music by ear,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there are some pipers certainly that do that, but maybe within competitive piping, you got to make sure you get it right, and so
Well,
that's
sure,
not as
yeah,
much of a thing.
It's a whole different world when you're being judged on it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's not to say that you wouldn't be in an Irish music competition, excuse me, because there are those as well, the flockules and the fesh competitions and stuff like that. But it's judged a little bit differently. It's more judged on the overall feel of the tune and the timing. That's certainly a big part of it, just like it is in piping, is making sure that you're not rushing, you're not dragging. That's those fundamentals are certainly the case. Are you in tune? That's an important part of it too. So some of that stuff obviously translates in both worlds, but it's definitely more of I think it feels like there's more room for interpretation.
Sure, that makes
I'm not
sense.
sure
yeah.
that's true, but it feels like that relative to Highland bagpipe music anyway. There's that's a little bit more allowed, I think, in the Irish world.
I've heard uilleann pipers who went to uilleann pipes from Highland pipes say that it's like going from marching band to jazz band, and it sounds to me like maybe comparing pipes to whistle is in a lot of ways similar.
Maybe. I mean, it's in some ways it's a lot more flexible. I mean, you obviously have more notes for one thing, but you have the ability to switch keys by switching whistles. You can play in 4, 5, 6 different keys, even with a standard D whistle. So, it's a lot more versatile instrument than you would think, probably at first glance, for being such a simple little thing.
Yeah.
You can do a lot with it, and there is it's with the style of it. There's a lot more I can see that jazz comparison. There's definitely a lot more room for those sort of slidey kind of blue notes that you get,
Yeah.
or can get with it. Yeah.
I feel like maybe one of the other possible barriers for entry and like learning by ear and stuff like that comes into this is the fact that with Highland pipes we're used to our tonic being low A, and with the most typical whistle is going to be a D whistle, and so the sort of equivalent thing for your fingers is a D instead of an A.
Yes.
And so written music can be really confusing.
Well, it's funny you say that. I mean, I think bagpipe music might be the most confusing music ever written, because yes, the thing, we call it an A, but
Right,
it's not an A. It's a B flat, and it's not even written in the B flat key signature. It's written in the C key signature. There's no
Right,
sharps and
yeah.
flats, so it's maddening.
Yeah, we say
from
C,
a classical
but
person, you'd want to punch yourself in the face. From
Yeah.
So,
But
yeah.
if that's all you know, right? Then going
Sure.
to then it's like, well, what are they talking about? In fact,
Right.
there's one of my favorite musicians is Timothy Cummings, and he writes arrangements of tunes. And if you purchase an arrangement from him that has like an organ accompaniment or something like that, right? The sounding note, will be concert B flat or concert D. It'll be
yeah.
something others can use. And he always includes a sheet of the written music that's just written in air quotes Piper's A, right? So
Sure.
what you can play a whistle and read it as if it were in Piper's A,
Okay.
right?
That makes sense.
So the
Okay.
sounding note will be concert D or G or whatever the key is, right?
You just grab the right whistle that fits that.
That's
way.
right, yeah.
Right, yeah. Well, that's the thing about it is, you can learn a tune, say, for example, on the whistle in the key of D, and then you grab a C whistle, and now you're in C, and you're playing
Yeah.
it exactly the same way. So that's one of those things it's hard for folks to kind of wrap their heads around at first, particularly if they're coming from some other world. But it's one of those, like, once you get it, it just kind of makes sense. There's basically 3 different positions on the whistle that you can get 3 different scales out of, and each whistle, each different keyed whistle gives you 3 different keys. So there's some of that, but the whole learning by ear thing, you mentioned that's I don't know if I'd call that a barrier to entry or not. I get where you're coming from on the piping side of things. The main thing to me is just to overcome that is just listening to a lot of music. That's
Yeah.
always the first thing that I tell people is just, who are you listening to? Who did you find? Oh, I found so and so on YouTube. Okay, we'll stop right there. Here's some folks you need to listen to. That kind of thing. So that's really what I think helps people cross that bridge from sheet music to learning is you just have to kind of imbibe as much of this as you can, and you're really looking for the feel of it, not so much the notes. I mean, the sheet music is fine as a refresher, and if you want to learn tunes that way, that's fine. But I think if you can hear it, it just makes it a whole lot easier to translate dots on a page into something that's musical.
Well, and that does make sense. I have heard some very high level bagpipers, competitive style bagpipers like Stuart Little, and others whose names I can't think of right now because I'm slightly nervous. Talk about that, when they approach learning pipe music, first they listen to how other people do it, then they sing it, and only then do they pick up their practice chanter, which I don't think is the typical way. Like most rank and file pipers, like certainly myself, have approached music. Like I think there's almost a hesitancy to learn by ear in some ways because it's like, what if I hear it wrong and get into a bad habit? No, I've got to look at the music. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I can see that certainly for piping, and I think that's, at least when I was doing it, it was sort of that kind of hybrid thing. I would make sure that I had the notes right, but it's really hard to translate, for me anyway, the groove of a tune from a piece of paper to what it's supposed to sound like without really hearing it properly. And maybe other people don't have that weakness. Maybe they can hear the whole thing and just see it, and just like reading a book. But for me, I was never a great sight reader. I was fine. I was okay. But I really needed to hear it to be able to get the idea of what it was supposed to be, and then I can figure out the details. Oh, that's a D throw here instead of a whatever it's supposed to be, that kind of thing. And that's sort of how I deal with it with Irish tunes as well. With sheet music, is if I just how does that tune start, and I'll pull up the session.org or something, and I'll get the first 2 bars. Like, oh, okay, there it is. That's that one, and then close it and off you go.
Yeah.
It comes back.
Yeah, speaking of the session.org, you do bring that one up a few times in your videos. Is that the best resource, or are there other favorites out there?
It's definitely the best resource. It's not a flawless resource because that whole collection is put together by people like me who may or may not have very, very great credentials. Who knows? Sure. Anybody can add to that site, and anybody can create a setting of a tune. And sometimes you look at those and say, where in the hell did this come from?
Right.
But other times it's it's mostly, like I said, useful for a refresher. If it's not exactly the way that I play it, it doesn't really matter, because I know how I'm going to play a tune. I know where I got it from, but I can't remember how the bloody thing started, so I can go on there and, there's your first 2 bars, and now I'm good to go.
And then you're off.
So it's a great resource for that. I wouldn't use it as a crutch, because I wouldn't even say you run the risk of running a bad setting of it. There's probably no such thing, but what you might learn is a setting that doesn't fit your session players.
Right,
the other folks that
yeah.
you're playing with, they may have a different setting, in which case you just learn something that you can't play with anybody on. So not the end of the world, but that's where to me it's always better if you are in an area where you've got sessions and you're trying to learn those tunes, just bring your phone, record it, learn them that way. Learn them from the people who are playing them, learn their settings of them.
That's one of the things that I've appreciated very most personally from your YouTube channel is the session etiquette videos, because I think that I, like a lot of pipers, like I haven't sat in on a session yet, but I dream of doing so. Like that's like the image in my head. Like, wouldn't that be awesome? With a little bit of haze in the air and everybody sitting around with drinks and just making awesome music.
And it is awesome. It's the reason to do it. It's the reason to play the music.
So I think a lot of people will have that in mind, when they're thinking like, maybe I will get a whistle, that's like the end goal, and
Sure.
and there are some local
It's a good
sessions
goal.
here. So I got onto some email lists and stuff, so I know when they're happening, and I know which session books they use, like which settings and stuff like that. But being able to watch your videos where you talk through, here's how a session works, right? Go listen for a bit first, don't do this, do that,
Right,
that takes the edge off of the fear and trepidation about actually
good.
going.
I mean, to be honest, I make those videos more of a stress relief for myself when I run a session and I have some oddity that happens. I feel like, okay, we need a little refresher on this. How it's supposed to be. And a part of it, in all honesty, is probably because Nashville is just weird, and because everybody here plays a guitar, and and everybody here is under the more is more mentality. And
Right.
That doesn't really work in Irish music, so you can't have 2 rhythm players playing at the same time unless you know exactly what you're doing. So there are some rules to it, and that's mostly a matter of for me to come home from a session and not want to rip my hair out.
I gotcha.
But yeah, it's it's mostly just a lot of listening. Like I started for about a year or two at least with the flute and the whistle sitting on a table and a beer in one hand and a cigarette in the other for 3 hours. It was the 90s and you could smoke indoors. So that's mostly what I did for about 2 years, is I just sat and listened. And then every now and then they go, hey kid, give us a blast of tunes. And I'm, okay, here's my 3 reels that I know, and I play those, and then they go, oh, that was lovely, and I put the flute down.
And that was lovely, sit back down.
Exactly, and that was your job. When you don't know, don't play.
Yeah.
That's the rule, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think at least, again, maybe I'm a little bit negatively biased in the Nashville scene, but I think everybody so wants to be heard and wants to play. That's not really what that's all about.
You got a choir made out of lead sopranos?
Kind of, yeah. There's some of that, yeah. And the top players, they know they're more than happy to sit and listen to something good, but a lot of folks just want to dive in and say, well, you need to be adding and not subtracting here. What are you contributing to this? And then just giving it a little bit of thought that way, I think, goes a long way, and also gives you the opportunity to just sit and listen and learn something, because that's how you get better.
So that brings up another thing that I think is something that I experience coming from piping, that maybe my friends, who I'm hoping will all be going out to buy whistles after hearing this, will also be experiencing the sense that once you turn it on, meaning your musical instrument, it can't turn off until the tune is over.
Sure.
Right? And I see this creep into, I play some other stuff, I play a little bit of accordion and stuff like that, and I have to
nice.
remind myself partway through a setting with other musicians, I could stop, I could back off. I don't have to keep going once I've started.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's a good thing to keep in mind, I think. There's a lot of that when if you don't know a tune, there's nothing wrong with kind of playing quietly to yourself, which is one advantage that literally every other instrument
what are you
has
talking about?
over the bagpipes. Yeah, anything else can do that. and there's a lot of that. There's, like I said before, don't play it if you don't know. But there are ways where you can kind of play quietly to yourself, or if there's just a section that you're missing, like how does this thing start? What key is it in? At least get something out of it.
Yeah.
I identified that this tune is in G. Great. So I learned something today. Maybe next time if they play it again, I'll get the first half. Then the next time I'll get get the second half, and it takes a while. It can take a long time. Or you ask somebody, hey, what was the name of that? And you go home and you find it, and you learn it. You find 3 recordings of it, and you figure out how you want to play it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Don't get the sheet music, but go home and find 3 different recordings.
Yes, quality recordings, and listen to them, right?
Yeah, and see what you like from the first person and what you like from the second person, and then you find your own way to play it. And that's kind of how that's how I've always tried to approach it.
Yeah.
Picking and choosing, and it's good to do it from different instruments too. I think that's a lot of a bit of a trap that I know I fell into, and a lot of folks do. It's a lot easier to learn. For me anyway, from an instrument that I already play. So like I have a harder time listening to records where it's a fiddle, accordion, and a guitar or something, because I don't play any of those.
Yeah.
I don't, whereas if there's a flute in there, if there's a whistle or pipes or something that I can more understand, I tend to like those bands or those recordings better. But you can gain a lot by listening to the same tune played by an accordion player or a fiddle player, whoever it might be, because they've got different things that they can do that we can't. But you can kind of get some ideas from it, I think. So it's helpful to listen to a variety of instruments on the same tunes, especially if it's a tune that you like. You've already got the melody kind of in your head. If it's one that I like that tune, I want to learn that. Those are the ones that are for me way easier to learn. The ones that I just already kind of like, rather than the ones that I have to learn.
Right, something that's grabbed you by the lapels already.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I had my mind blown a little while ago. I've mentioned it before, but my friend Jeremy, who has a bagpipe and history podcast called Way Two Twags Bagpipes and History Podcast, he plays through I think it's mostly, is it 17th century? I know he does some 18th and 19th century tunes, but I think he's focused on 17th century pipers repertoire, and he finds these old settings, a lot of, and like plays them on border pipes and small pipes and uilleann pipes and stuff.
Nice,
very cool.
yeah.
But he played a recording of a fiddler playing a strathspey, and I had never heard a strathspey played on anything but highland pipes. And first I had like kind of a crisis moment, because I was like, this is magical. This is beautiful. Like, I could never make this happen on highland pipes. Why are we even trying, to play strathspeys? But just, you mentioned that we can learn from listening to other instruments, that's that was an epiphany moment for me, listening to another instrument and then that informing my piping instead of having to just listen to pipes.
Oh, absolutely. Ashley McIsaac, he was always kind of one of those guys that was famous for that, for playing piping tunes on fiddle in really cool, interesting ways. I always liked his playing that way.
Mm-hmm. Now, you did mention other instruments, and I don't want to make you feel like you have to say out loud that you play something if you're not comfortable saying it. But sometimes in the background of some of your videos, I have seen maybe a tenor banjo. I saw those shuttle pipes. What other stuff do you dabble with, and what other stuff do you play seriously?
Well, I can't play strings to save my life. My now ex, she's got a bunch of instruments here that are still lying about the house, and there's all kinds of stuff to mess with. But I started out playing piano when I was a little kid and absolutely hated it and did not practice. And I did it for about 7 years or so. And so I've got some background in it that's still in there someplace that I can use occasionally to do some accompaniment stuff. But now mostly flute, whistle, pipes. I did play uilleann pipes for a while when I lived in Iowa, of all places. There's a piper out there named Tim Britton, who's a brilliant player. And so I was working with him on uilleann pipes for a while, but they just got to be such a wrangly octopus, I ended up selling them and buying a laptop about 15 years ago. Because I don't have the time to commit to this. This is one of those, as they say, 10 years to master, 10 years, or what is that, 10 years to learn, 10 years to practice, 10 years to make one of those.
Or is it 20 years for each?
Probably,
it's something impossible,
let's be honest, no, I'm not going to do this. And I'd already kind of started to phase out highland pipes by that point.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm just going to focus on the things that I really enjoy, and that's flute and whistle. Really more flute. I think for gigs and sessions and stuff, it's pretty much all flute. But the whistles for YouTube and for songs and for stuff in weird keys.
Yeah. Yeah. No, with the flute, what if some of my friends are listening here and they're thinking well, whistle or flute? Because it's in the most simple versions of flutes, it's just a whistle sideways, right? So.
Oh, absolutely.
The
fingers are exactly the same, and I always tell people start with the whistle first.
That's best, huh?
Because the flute's got the embouchure. 90% of playing the flute is the embouchure, whereas the whistle is doing all that work for you. You just blow into it, and it just kind of works. The flute, if you miss that, it just won't sound at all. It's just like nothing, like blowing over a Coke bottle. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So, you got to get that perfect, really. So it's definitely better to start with whistle. In Ireland, everybody starts with a whistle, just like we all start with the recorders here in school.
Yeah.
It's a simple way to get started, get going, and you can kind of translate those skills to pipes or to flute or really to, at least to some degree, to any instrument, at least as far as the style goes. So yeah, definitely best to start with the whistle. To me, the flute is the world's best instrument because you have so much control over absolutely every part of it, the tone quality and everything, because it's all coming from your mouth. But it's a drag sometimes. It's tricky.
Yeah.
It's weird. But the whistle's great
that embouchure, right?
Exactly, yeah, and the whistle just does all that for you. So you can just focus on fingers, focus on ornaments, focus on style, and not have to worry about that other very, very challenging part until you're ready. And you can just spend time just getting that. I mean, I've got some students who do both flute and whistle, and our quote-unquote flute lessons is basically just them blowing long notes to make sure they've got good tone.
Yeah,
You
just
start with
getting
that.
noise.
Just get a good, solid tone, and screw around with it. You can kind of roll it in, roll it out, and just find out where that sweet spot is.
Yeah.
And just train your brain to be able to hit that every time. And that's really what you're going for the first year or so of playing flute.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it does occur to me, too, that, like, one of the really great things about whistles is, like, of course you can spend good money on a really great whistle, but you don't have to spend much to get a decent whistle. And so if you want to play flute, go ahead and start with whistle. It's not like you're saying go spend hundreds of dollars on a whistle first.
Right. It's not this or that. You can kind of do both. And yeah, they call it a penny whistle back in the day because they used to cost a penny, and they cost a bit more than that. But you can find some really cheap ones for $10. You can spend $50 to $100 and get something that'll last you out. You get a professional instrument that anybody would be happy to have for $50, $100.
And if anybody wants to see whistle reviews and comparisons, this guy's YouTube channel is the place to go. They are delightful.
It's funny. A fellow from Israel reached out about a month or so ago and said he was making new whistles, and he sent me a picture. I was like, wow, this looks awesome. Would you mind checking one out? I said, sure. So it just got delivered like 2 days ago. So
Awesome.
I'll be my next forward to that. An Israeli-made whistle, which from the pictures looks beautiful, so I'm curious to check it out.
Yeah, that'll be way cool.
That's been one of the really cool things about YouTube is people just reaching out and trying it. I never really had much interest in trying other whistles because I've got stuff that I like that I can play, and I didn't really care. But people hit me up, and they're, wow, there's some folks making some good stuff out there these days.
Yeah,
there's some really professional instruments out there that are affordable, which is great.
Well, and as if the excellent content isn't enough of a draw for people to go and watch the YouTube channel if they aren't already watching it, you also do these periodic giveaways. And for me, in my imagination, you must just have like a Scrooge McDuck style vault somewhere in your house that's just a sea of like, how do you say that? Fedogs? Fedogs?
Fodog, yeah. Fodog, yeah.
Fodogs, and you just like swim through them, and like every time that vault is too full, it's like, I'll give a few of these away. But
kind of, yeah. It's something to that effect. I just tend to acquire these. And, there was one I just piled them all up. I ended up doing a video for TikTok, I think, and it was just kind of a goofy thing. It was just this table full of, some of them were very nice. Some of them were hot garbage, basically. These busted up old bamboo fifes and crap that I've had for years. And so some of them, I'll throw stuff on YouTube and just, give me the like, give me the comment, and I'll randomly draw one. But some of these companies have reached out and have done some really cool stuff about, they'll send me one to test and quote unquote test, and then they'll send one specifically to give away. Because their stuff out, and it's the companies really, I guess they've kind of embraced this whole way of marketing. Yeah, I guess because they get marketing kind of for free.
It seems effective to me because it's like you already have their core audience. You have exactly the people they want to reach. Right. So.
Well, and that's the thing. It's kind of a small market. We're not going to be advertising these in front of the Super Bowl or something like that. Right. Not everybody cares, but the people who do care, they seem to find, my stuff and the other folks like me who are doing this on YouTube.
We all congregate to the same places.
Yeah, kind of, I guess. So,
well, and that's...
I definitely have quite a collection at the moment.
One of those companies that sent you one for you and one to give away, I'm pretty sure was Lear, right?
It was, yeah, about a year and a half ago now, I think, when they were just kind of getting ramped up, yeah.
And I love their whistles look so pretty. The videos I've heard of them are great. I've got one of their key of A whistles on my Christmas list with my wife right now. So
nice.
We'll see
if that happens. One of those about a year ago. It's really nice. It's A is kind of one of those weird ones for Irish music players where it's not terribly practical.
But for a bagpiper,
exactly, yeah, it's going to be kind of a one-to-one translation there, which is great, yeah. And I've done that too. I've moved some bagpipe tunes over to whistle that way, pretty easily a few times using that. Yeah, it's a lovely whistle. All their stuff is great. They just started doing silver-plated whistles.
Yeah, I saw your video of that. That was beautiful. My goodness,
it's lovely. Yeah, it's really nice. They did it, and it actually makes a difference in the sound. I was not expecting that. I was genuinely surprised.
Yeah, that surprised me as well. I was like, metal's metal, whatever. But no, it's different.
Yeah, and who knows? They may have changed some other parts of the design too. Like I said, I think they were still trying to get their final design knocked out. But they've done a great job, and they make some really quality stuff. I've talked to those folks a few times. They've called me from Ireland a handful of times just to kind of game plan, and let me know. And they offered me a place to stay, which I thought was awesome. I'm going to take them up on that for sure. We're going over there hopefully this summer, before the summer's over.
Oh, that's so
guys,
cool.
So I would like to, yeah. So
I'm excited to see
they're
whatever
good
comes
folks.
from that.
Yeah, they're cool cats over there. They do some cool stuff.
Well, and they have I'll put a link in the show notes to their website, and they did send a discount code,
Oh, good.
which is Heritage Bagpipes. So
Nice.
I'll put that down there as well. Though it occurs to me now, Sean, I don't know if they track which discount codes are being used, but you have a larger audience than me, and you probably also have discount codes. Is it beneficial to you somehow for people to be using?
It doesn't matter to me now. I'm not getting any kind of a
I see.
kickback or any kind of thing now. I every now and then they'll remind me that I think I have a code whistle tutor as well, so I put that up on a few videos. But yeah, by all means, if they've given you a discount, might as well fire away. Yeah, go ahead and use it because they really do. They're pretty affordable. Those guys. I think their top end one is. It's only like $80 or $100 or something like that. It's pretty reasonable for a professional instrument. Plus with a discount, they're reasonable.
Yeah, I've been
for a
very
quality instrument.
like pleasantly surprised by like their price does seem to be yeah, very 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 reasonable. Well, I don't want to say reasonable because like like other excellent whistle makers who charge a little more, it's also reasonable because they're making good product, and so they ought to be able to charge for it. But like it's a little bit lower price, but still a really great whistle, and that's very attractive, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
You can get a professional handmade instrument for between like $70 to $150 in that range from a variety of folks. There's quite a few people that are making instruments in that range. Like the ones that I play regularly is a fellow here in Tennessee, of all places. He lives in a fairly small town, a couple hours away from me, and I play his pretty much exclusively. They don't look all that they look kind of like cheapo generation whistles, but they're all handmade and they play professionally. And those are the ones I like. His are a little more expensive than the Lear's, but I've just kind of been hooked on his stuff for a long time. But then the Lear came out. They started making theirs about a year or two ago, I think, and they've sort of taken the world by storm. They've kind of gotten everywhere. They've got a lot of really great players to test out their stuff, and everybody's had pretty good things to say. Joni Madden, she's the one that jumps out at me. She's a brilliant player and played a few lovely tunes on their instruments.
I really, there's no reason to focus too much on this kind of stuff, but I do get excited about logos and stuff, and I love their logo too.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, they explained it to me, the swan thing. I can't remember what the story was. He broke it down for me. There's some sort of mythological callback to that. I can't remember what the deal was. I think those guys they're up in, I want to say they're up in Galway, I think. Yeah, they're good folks. They're nice folks. I think they've got a really good game plan, good business plan. I think they're trying to. They seem very serious about getting good instruments in the hands of players. They seem to really take a lot of pride in that, which is kind of cool. I mean, I think that's nice to see. It's not they're not just rolling out machine-made garbage.
Right.
They're putting a lot of pride in it, which is good.
Yeah. Now, this brings to mind as you talk about like use any discount code. All these whistle makers, various a ton of them are great. You in general, Sean, have what seems to me like an attitude of abundance, where like I don't get the impression that you think in any way that like there's a limited amount of success in the world, and so if anybody else gets success, that's less success for you, because you're very, very regularly advocating that people get resources other than yourself, other instructors, other websites, other YouTube channels, for direction and tuition and music and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a friend of mine, Brian Conway, a wonderful fiddle player out of New York. He released a record a few years ago now, I guess, and he called it "Consider the Source," which I thought was a great line, and it's a reference to something that would come up at his sessions a lot of times when he'd pull out a weird setting of a tune. Where'd you get that from? Because there was some sort of non-official, non-traditional source, and so that was kind of the joke. Consider the source. Where are you getting your tunes from? That kind of thing. So I think that applies for tuition as well. There's a lot of folks on YouTube, which is great because we have this platform and that people anybody can get out there and teach and learn. But at the same time, anybody can get out there and teach, which is not always ideal. And there's the main thing that I try to tell people is find somebody, if you want to learn, whether it's online, whether it's in-person lessons, whether it's individual like Skype tuition type deal, find somebody who's doing what it is that you want to do. If you want to play Irish music, find somebody who plays Irish music. If you want to play video game music, find somebody who does that. And like I always tell people, I don't know anything about bluegrass or jazz or video games or like elf metal and whatever else people ask me about. I don't know anything about that stuff.
The world of elf metal is one that's well worth getting into.
Well, I'm sure that's true, and I don't hate it. It's fine. It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in it, and I never will be. And I've accepted that about myself. I would never.
You've come to the realization that elf metal might not be.
Well, it's not for everybody.
We all have to come to that moment at some point in our life.
In fairness, neither is Irish music. I taught a fella, coincidentally in Israel, he wanted to learn how to play. What was that song? The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Oh, sure, love that tune. Yeah,
sure. And he wanted to play that. I said, well, okay, you're not really using the right tool for the job, but I'll see what I can do here. So everybody wants to learn whatever they want to learn. And I'm certainly not going to throw any stones at that.
Yeah.
I would just say find somebody who does what you do or what you want to do.
Right.
And that's what I always try to tell people. And then if I am working on a tune with somebody, the first thing I say is, okay, now go find 3 other versions of this. You and I just played it kind of the way I play it. That's not the right way to play it. It's just my way to play it. Go find somebody else. Maybe you'll find something else, like in the second part, somebody does some little different thing that you like. Well, cool, do that. That's fine. If you like it, better knock yourself out.
I don't know if this stands out to other people, but to me, encountering a statement like that from an instructor in anything is exactly what makes me trust them. Because if someone wants to set up a silo and say, this is the way I do it, and that's the right way, don't even think about the way other people do it, that immediately turns me off.
Well, it may turn you off. At the same time, my way, I could see also turning some folks off. And it has before, where it's where I'm not necessarily rigid enough.
Gotcha.
I think people want it. Some people just want to be told, here's how you do it, and off you go. And that's fine too, but and that probably works in a lot of styles. I just personally don't find that works for Irish music. Because there are 1,900 different ways to play a tune. Yeah. And that's just a fact. So find the way that makes you happy. I wouldn't want to teach somebody something where it's constantly a struggle. Right. Because they just don't like it. Well, then why are you doing it?
Doesn't have a lot of staying power.
No, you're not going to learn it. You're not going to enjoy it. That doesn't really find something better to do with your time. Yeah. Whether that's learn a tune a better way or do something else altogether.
Get into elf metal.
Yeah, exactly. I hear it's great.
How do you decide what tunes to do for your tutorials?
For the tutorials, a lot of them will come through requests. There's a bunch of them that I've done over the years that are just kind of what I would call bog standard Irish session tunes that kind of everybody is going to need to know at some point if you want to play sessions. There's a handful of stuff that's just good starter tunes, like basic slow songs like Raglan Road or Down by the Sally Garden, stuff like that are just kind of good simple one-octave melodies. But a lot of them come from either YouTube or TikTok requests. People just say, I've always wanted to hear this tune. Or it's something that I'll hear at a session, like, holy crap, that tune was buried back in the recesses of my brain for a decade, and it just popped out, and it's a great tune. I wish I had thought of this before. And it'd be a fun one, and it fits well in the whistle. So a lot of it is just kind of what I'm feeling at any given time, And at this point, I've been doing YouTube now for a decade.
There's so much material up there, man.
Exactly. I mean, I've done a lot. Everybody's done a lot. There's a lot of stuff that's already been covered, and I try not to do too much duplication. Going back and hitting the same stuff. But there's a couple of those standards that I have done a few times. Yeah. That I've updated because when I first recorded them, I was 15 years younger. And, not nearly as experienced. So, it's a lot of it is just what people want to hear. Yeah, and if it's something that's at least tangentially related to the Irish traditional music world, I'm not doing Freebird or something like that. Just because somebody requests it, but I have on the other side, I have done like a couple of Beatles songs and a couple of oddball things like that just seem kind of nice and people want to hear them. I've done some hymns for people who request that kind of stuff. So
there's a
little variety.
This is another thing that I like about your videos is your dry comedy. You did mention once you said that sometimes modern tunes get into your sessions, and you were like, there are 2 modern tunes in my sessions, one that my friend brought 20 years ago and one that I brought 10 years ago. Right. That's about right. Yeah. So you do modern stuff sometimes.
We do, yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing too. Modern is also sort of a relative term.
When your canon is several hundred years old, modern.
Exactly. There's that. Well, plus, and then there's modern in terms of Irish traditional, quote unquote, Irish traditional music, and then there's modern in terms of pop music. We're not working with that kind of stuff, but some of these some of these modern tunes are wonderful. A lot of them, at least to my ear, are different just to be different. And you can kind of
Sure.
tell that they put in a weird minor blurb here just because it felt like getting weird. There's not really any reason for it.
Yes.
But some of these folks, like Joni Madden, Michael McGoldrick, they write modern tunes in really clever ways that either they just sound clever on their own, or they sound clever because they sound old. They sound like old traditional
Oh,
tunes.
sure.
And that's
It's a
a
new
real skill.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful skill to be able to come up with something new that doesn't sound like it.
Yeah.
Because that's to me that's my only real complaint about modern new. A lot of them sound like exercises, like they're just doing arpeggio exercises. Like, okay, we'll do that at home. practice at home.
Right.
Don't practice on my record that I paid $10 for.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But some of them are, like I said, wonderful. Some folks really do have a great ear. That's a skill that I lack.
Yeah.
Is the ability to prolifically generate new music. Liz Carroll, she's another classic one who's done some just wonderful stuff.
Yeah. There's of course the practicality of playing a lot on D whistles in sessions and stuff like that. But having played around a bunch, do you have a favorite key to play in? Is there something that resonates especially for you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely D is the standard, and that's what you always pretty much have to play. But when I'm just screwing around and just sitting around the house and playing, I have an F whistle that this fella Gary Humphrey made for me. And
F as
it's my
in
favorite.
up several steps from D?
No, down.
Down, okay.
Lower. Yeah, it's a very kind of an alto or much more mellow. Basically halfway between the high D and the low D.
Sure.
Kind of in that range. And it's nice because it gives you B flat as well really easily. C gets C pretty easily. It's not terribly practical. I use it in the band for like 2 or 3 songs. We've got a couple that are in, like one of them's in D minor, and it works pretty well for that. But again, mostly just screwing around. That's the one that I like to play. I'll pull that out when I'm sitting at my desk killing time, just because it's pleasant and it's a good spacing, and I use the old piper's grip to it fits well that way. It's comfortable to play. It's easy to play. It's just pleasant. If I am writing stuff, I tend to write on that whistle more than anything.
Yeah.
It's just fun to play.
The piper's grip thing is something that I hadn't even thought of until pretty recently. I have a brother-in-law who's been playing pennywhistle since he was a kid, and he just recently got his first low D whistle. And he did. I asked him how he was getting on with it.
Do you know what he got?
I don't know. I know it's not Cesado, and I know that it's not
Dixon. Maybe Dixon.
It might have been a Dixon. It's something that's reasonably nice. It's a reasonably good metal, nice whistle.
Oh, it's a metal one. Okay, Dixons are all plastic. Okay.
Oh, I see. I haven't actually met the whistle yet. He lives out in California, and so I'm hoping he'll bring it next time he comes over. But
totally.
But he did mention to me that the learning how to do the piper's grip is throwing him off a bit, and that was the first time I went, it's kind of like a superpower if you're a piper coming to, and it does seem like a lot of pipers. Like I'm thinking like Ross Ainsley and again a whole list of people whose names I can't think of right now because I'm nervous. Jarlath.
Jarlath Henderson. Yeah.
Henderson, yeah.
Sure.
A lot of pipers seem to play low D whistles. And maybe that's part of why that barrier is gone. But if someone had told me that there was a recovering highland bagpiper who was making YouTube whistle content, I would have assumed there'd be a lot of low D. But there's not a ton of low D on your channel.
And people ask for that a lot. There's not one because not everybody's got it, so it doesn't. I try to get videos that are at least marginally accessible to the largest number of people. But the other thing is, I don't really play low D myself.
Yeah.
I play the flute. If I'm going to play in that range, I'd much rather play flute because there's just a lot more that I can do with it because of that embouchure control, and because, like in my case, I've got a keyed flute, so I've got some other options for that. But the piper's grip finger spacing thing, I think you might find that the F whistle is probably going to be in much closer because the D is a huge stretch. It's a much bigger stretch than on highland pipes.
Yeah, I've seen some people even skip their ring finger and go to a pinky to make the
which is actually interestingly a useful way to play it because that's how you'd play it for uilleann pipes. So you're kind of just faking uilleann pipe fingering that way by using the pinky.
I didn't realize that.
Definitely
That's
works.
good to know.
Yeah, that definitely works. There's kind of an extra hole in the uilleann pipe chanter, but on the F whistle, it's nice because you can still do that kind of more comfortable piper's grip spacing, but it's not nearly as broad as you would get on the D whistle, which is another reason why I think I like playing that one so much. It's just comfortable. But the trick to what the whistle player's equivalent of the piper's grip is you put your ring fingers down. pads
instead of that
comfortably, pads,
pinky,
and then just let your other fingers fall naturally. That's kind of the trick to it, which works better in a video form where I can actually demonstrate that. But that's the idea.
Video, which I have seen, so
oh, there you go.
it's
exactly.
out there.
So it's exactly, indeed, it can be found. But yeah, and that's the other thing. Not everybody does that. Not every whistle player will do piper's grip, even on the low whistles. How they do that with just fingertips, I have no idea. It seems incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But what's his face? Brian Finnegan from Flute famously said, "Well, I'm not a piper. I don't use the piper's grip." Well, okay, but it works for him. But he's pretty much the only one.
Yeah.
Most people who play low whistles will do that. Will stretch across.
Have you ever had occasion to try one of those like piper's fingering whistles that has a leading note down low and the high tonic on the back, so it feels more like a practice chanter?
I don't think I've ever played one that's got the extra hole in the bottom hand. I have played the ones that have the back C natural hole. That's how they'll do it for whistles.
Yeah.
So rather than having a cross finger the C, you can have a back hole. I've tried it. In fact, I just got into a weird conversation on TikTok with somebody the other day because I made a comment about how no, they don't make minor keyed whistles. Well, yeah, they do. They make all kinds of weird scales. Like, okay, yeah, I get that. But in the world of Irish music that I occupy, no, they don't. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
Nobody does that. And there's just not really a need for it. So there's, like, even the fellow whose whistles I make, Gary Humphrey, he's got some of those, weird bonus holes on the whistles. And
right,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, you want to try one of these? I go, no, not really. It's fine. I'm fine. I'm pretty good with what I got. It works. So I don't quite, I just never saw the point. And nobody's ever really been able to explain the point to me. I decided I needed to get it.
The only song I've ever thought to myself, my buddy Jeremy, who he did a whole episode of different versions of the tune Caberfay. And it uses the leading note below the tonic quite a bit, and that was the only time that I thought to myself, this is where, if I were playing this on whistle, I would wish that I had a pinky hole.
Well, there's a couple of tunes where it drops, like on the flute, it goes below the bottom note D, you can go down to a low C sharp and a low C, and you can get keys for that. I actually I inquired on getting those very cool keys for my flute, and it was about $1,600 just for those. I thought, you know what, I'm fine.
I don't need those notes.
So exactly, I gave it some thought until I found that out. I mean, I'm all that stuff. It's I could see the use for it, but there's ways around it that the Irish music community has simply accepted, like jumping the octave when you need to drop below the range of the instrument.
Right,
just jump up.
That's true.
That's just what we do, and that's
just fold that.
That's just kind of become part of the tradition.
Right, it's certainly a familiar thing for pipers too, right? That you often fold tunes in on themselves to make them work.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, same idea. Yeah, it's very common in Irish music too.
Yeah. Well, Sean, I'm going to make sure that I've got links to everything I've promised throughout, and definitely links to your website. Is it just whistletutor.com?
Yeah, it's mostly just a placeholder calendar.
Yeah.
I don't really use the website for much of anything. It's mostly just YouTube and strangely enough, TikTok these days. I'm about 700 years too old to be on TikTok, but I'm doing it nonetheless.
Yeah.
It's kind of entertaining.
It seems like it's a hot place for musicians. I keep being very nearly convinced by my music friends that, like, maybe there's stuff going on. What's going on over there, peeking over the fence, Did I lose you? Nuts.
For it, I think.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, I lost you for just a second there, Sean.
Sorry, did I drop out? Yeah, sorry about that. No.
But it's okay.
Good.
I'm kind of drawing us to a close anyway. I've already taken over an hour of your time. You've been very generous. I really appreciate it. But what other we've mentioned several times that you want to find quality things to listen to, and you've brought up several names of whistlers and groups and stuff. Maybe tell me, do you have a few that come to the top, kind of top of the list that come to mind that, like, you'd say, you want to get into whistles? Listen to these.
Absolutely. Joni Madden, she's kind of my current personal favorite. She's out of New York, plays with a group called Cherish the Ladies. She's been playing with Cherish the Ladies for probably 20 or 30 years at this point. Silver flute player, oddly. Probably about the only one playing silver flute in Irish music, at least at that level. I'm not a big silver flute fan, but as far as her whistle playing, she's by far my favorite.
Silver flute, as far as the lingo goes, that's like what you'd see in a concert band.
Yeah, the BAME system, with all the keys and
all those buttons,
all that stuff. Which to me has never really been my kind of sound. She makes it dance, she makes it work somehow. But really, her whistle playing is spectacular. Mary Bergen is kind of the godmother of the Irish whistle. She's got 2 records, Fado Gaston 1 and 2, And those are just amazing, just pure whistle. Some of it's unaccompanied, some of it's very simple accompaniment. It's just great whistle playing. Those two records are great. Mike McGoldrick, who's I think currently playing with what's his face from oh god, I just blanked on his name now. Mark Knopfler. He's played with all kinds of folks. He's a great flute and whistle player, piper as well. He's another one of my favorites. And then for the flute side of things, Matt Malloy was my other really big influence. The Chieftains. He's amazing. But Seamus Egan too. He's from Solace. He's kind of the other one that got me going, that got me started. But those are all great options, great people to start with.
Yeah.
Just, absolute monster players. Great tunes, great technique, great control, phrasing, kind of the whole package. They're all just wonderful players.
Well, I'll find good links to all of these people's music and put those in the notes as well. My hope is that all my piper friends who hear this are now running out to purchase whistles and listen to whistle music and kind of expand horizons that way.
Yeah, it'll give your ears a break too.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah,
stay out
that's
of the
right.
top octave at least, and then it's nice and mellow.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, if I haven't plugged it enough, your YouTube channel is like, man, just so chock full of really, really good stuff. Such a great resource.
I appreciate it. It's fun to do. It's a fun project anyway.
And if people want to take it more seriously, are you constantly taking students? Do you teach online?
I do, yeah. I've got a handful of folks. My scheduling's a little bit weird just because we're thank God, finally getting back to playing a lot more. The world's returning, so we're doing some more playing. So the teaching is, I'm not the best as far as schedules because I also have a real job, a real person job that I work, so I have to deal with that. And then scheduling folks in and around, I'm not the most organized. So hopefully my students are patient enough with me that they can roll with it. But yeah, if people wanted to get into Irish music and specifically, or even just the fundamentals, I guess, I'd be happy to work with folks. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe not as much elf metal, at least not yet.
It's not my wheelhouse. There's probably plenty of other folks